elsewhere, but we can I can try to see what's happening then, because I'm just preparing maybe just the environment with PowerShell and everything. Just have a quick check now that the master is here, and and then I will we can try to see. But I'm quite let me run quickly something. PowerShell, where are those? So if I just do a deer and then semicolon and then and pass. No, it does it for me. But that's okay. Let's anyway. I'm just trying to get everything done correctly. Okay. Sorry, up to you.
No. Hey guys. Hey, good morning. No. This is important. Continue. We've got a couple of minutes to waste as people. We wait for people to join anyway. So.
Okay. Let me maybe already share my screen quickly then. So, and Nikhil, like that, you can maybe tell me if it's.
Yeah. So actually, semicolon is working. The issue is not with the semicolon. There is a what should I say? The command that is which we use inside the UI folder, Meshery folder for UI purpose. That is make setup UI libs. Inside that command, there is the functions that we run is cd space dot separated by a semicolon. There are 3 commands inside it. When I run that command, I get an error like path not specified. But when I copy the command and run it separately, that is instead of using make setup ellipse, then it works.
Okay, but on PowerShell directly.
Yeah, so I ran right on PowerShell.
Right. Perfect. Okay, let's see. I'm not sure. I have something here. Do I have Git? No. Choco. Install Git. I don't know. Come on. Okay, so sorry. I'll prepare the things, Lee, anyway, on
okay.
Just that I can maybe show midways, maybe do a quick test on running Meshery then on Windows so far, where we got what are maybe the few pain points, but Nikhil was a great help, so I think we might get that fixed sooner than later.
Cool. Actually, I tried the command. So actually, I had a talk with you on Slack a few days ago. At that time, we talked about this Windows thing. Then you said that it will work. So I tried it on PowerShell. Because in command prompt it doesn't work. So I tried it on PowerShell. Then semicolon works in PowerShell, but that command specifically directly it doesn't work. But when I ran it separately, it works. That was it.
Okay, let me get everything in place on Windows, and then maybe I can retry exactly the steps that you've done with the latest copy of the on GitHub.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
It's okay, Lee. The floor is yours.
Yeah, no, this is actually, this makes me, wow, okay. I'd been talking to myself, not only then, but every time that you'd said Lee, I had said something and I was talking. No, this is great. That was a great use of the first few minutes anyway, because we just need to give people a couple of minutes to join. And moreover, this excites me because I speak as much as I do mostly to fill in the air and provide opportunities for others to have ideas and thoughts and then chime in, and so this is great because this is one of the first times where the community unto its own is just doing you guys are doing your thing, which it tickles me. This makes me really excited. And it makes me really excited actually that 2 of you are I mean, this has happened any number of times now, but it's just like for the first time kind of on the call here where two of you are just saying like, hey, we've got a connection, we need to talk and sync on something. I did wince a little when I heard PowerShell on this call like 3 times, and so I was like, oh, a little early in the morning for so much Windows-centric things to be said. And that is
it makes you happy, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. My ears perked. Awesome. Okay. Here's the. We'll get going. Here is the link to the meeting minutes. Putting it into the chat. I say it every time, and I really do mean it. Just like Nuno and Nikhil were just talking. And using the air time, please each of you go in and use the paper time, if you will, in Google Docs. Record your attendance, help take notes. Last time we actually had a great set of discussions, I think last time we met, and in part because the discussions were so engaging, we have not so great meeting minutes. So help me where you can, please, and Girish and everybody. These are not my meeting minutes. This is not my project. This is your project. These are your meeting minutes. This is your, and I hope Ashish, Subham, Gunjan, Anand, and Nikhil, and everyone who's on the call. I know we spent a lot of time talking this week in our Wednesday call. I know we spent a lot of time talking about what it is that I hope that you're taking away from the project, and so. Developing that sense of ownership over the project is very healthy, and it's something that I hope Nuno, I think maybe you're the only one on the call that hasn't had to listen to me go on, and maybe Fanji, who's here, which is awesome, hasn't heard me kind of pontificate about what it is that I'm hopeful for you guys to gain and glean out of participating here. I think a lot of that stuff is probably relatively obvious. But I want it to be as much of a two-way street as possible. I want you guys to be taking as much or more than you're giving. So, by the way, since Fanji is on, I don't know if I really got a chance to give him a moment to introduce to the community, and both let him, give you guys an opportunity to get to know him, and vice versa. And so, Fanji, I don't know if you're in an environment where you're able to either unmute and maybe come on camera for a moment, but I'd love for these folks to get to know you better. Do you want to take a moment and introduce yourself? Okay, very good. Okay, and you need just a minute. No problem. So just signal when you're ready, and we'll come back. So switching tracks, going back to the meeting minutes. I think I'm trying to keep the general announcements that we have relatively short because, frankly, there's so much going on in the service mesh ecosystem that we can just sit here and have a general conversation about meshy things. But I want to try to get to some specific items on Meshery today if we can. So I think the general announcements were, last week we said Girish had just given a workshop, if I'm getting my weeks correct. And I showed a couple of photos that Girish had taken of the workshop. Am I getting my weeks off? Did everyone see in the Meshery channel a link to the recap of DevFest Montreal that Archie had posted? I think he posted it into the general channel. I guess mostly for.
I'm not sure in the channel, but I came across it in YouTube actually.
Oh, okay. Do we know, was Girish's workshop on video? Was that videoed?
Oh, Girish. Okay, sorry. I'm Okay, I'm mistaking here. Sorry. I saw the NSM call that you.
Oh yeah, yeah. No,
Sorry.
No. That's a great point as well. That just I'll bring that up in a second. But Girish, was your workshop recorded?
No, it was.
Okay. Okay, well then just moving on. By the way, so Meshery will be presented at NSM Con. I think we mentioned that last time. But as part of that presentation is the fact that we would be demonstrating the NSM adapter. And so Harshini, hopefully you're listening to this later, we need to move from a beta version of the adapter to much more of a stable version because there's going to be people poking at it in a very good way. And so since she's not on, maybe we'll move forward. There's one thing that there's a new community member that I don't know will be on the call today, but his name's Anton, and some of you have probably seen him. He's I was hoping that he would be on because I think he's got a bit of an interest around SMI, and I mentioned last week that SMI, that community is asking for Meshery to be a conformance tool. Again, quickly, SMI is the service mesh interface. They'd like for Meshery to be a conformance tool to validate that various service meshes have implemented to spec, have implemented the service mesh interface specification. And that's the same ask that OpenSMI is asking for as well. And we need volunteers, and I suspect Anton or Ant might be the guy. I don't know, between him and Mr. Nick Jackson. Okay, so we'll blow past that since those folks aren't on the call. I do want to call out a couple of things that for the most part, our contribution process has gotten fairly rote, fairly routine, which is good. There's a few things to highlight right now that as each of you are creating your local branches and pushing those branches to the Meshery repository, you'll want to do some diligence and just clean up old branches, old stale branches that you're not using anymore. So I think we were getting close to 100 or so, and we've been trying to prune those back. So that's one activity. The other one is to just a healthy reminder that as you open a pull request, to in the description of the pull request, not in the pull request title, but in the description itself, put in the issue number that you're addressing. So let's see if this first one has it. Just as an example, it may not. It doesn't. I pointed out where if you do include in your description here, something like closes or fixes a particular issue number, when your PR merges, it will auto close the related issue, which is great because that is good automatic housekeeping that will help us keep things run a tight ship. Anand did a great thing here by referencing the issue number that he's providing a fix for in this PR. That's great, although Anand, the suggestion would be, as opposed to putting the issue number in the pull request title, if you would, put it into the description. Two reasons. One is what I had just said about GitHub automatically closing your issue when the PR is merged. So if 280 is mentioned in the description, then it will be auto-closed when PR 306 is merged. The other reason not to include it in the title is because it can be a bit, it takes a moment to figure out what 280 is versus what 306 is, which one is the PR number, which one is the issue number. So just some housekeeping items that we're going over. We've talked about signing of your commits in the past, and I think everyone on the call has gotten into this habit of signing your commits, which is great because we enforce a developer's certificate of origin. As we enforce that, and actually Anand's example here is great. He's got his sign-off going for his commits. Subham had been helping, and Gunjan as well, been helping with enhancing the contributing guide, which does probably need more explanation and expansion. At some point, maybe we'll move this contribution guide into something like the Meshery docs to just make it easier to go through, because I think there's going to be a number of sections and a number of different concerns and questions that people have. But Gunjan, thank you for highlighting how it is that as a contributor working on your local branch, how you can keep your local branch up to speed with master. Because while you're working on a local copy of code, other PRs are being merged on master, and as you go to merge your branch, as you go to open a PR, you're likely to you as a contributor are likely to get out of sync, and so you'll find yourself executing this set of commands relatively frequently. That's good. And Subham had added this. I think it was Subham, maybe it was Ashish, or it might have been Ashish. I don't remember. But it had added just if you're using Visual Studio Code, which is a relatively popular IDE, that you can have Visual Studio Code automatically sign all of your commits for you, so you don't even have to really think about it. If you're using command line Git, if you're using Git on the command line, you can create a quick alias inside of your Git config to have it auto sign off. And we've talked about these things in the past, so I was just kind of going through some housekeeping items. Let me pause. Anyone have any question on those housekeeping items? Okay. Good. Going on. So many of you have met Raul recently, who came to us through the workshop in Guadalajara. He is thankfully taking on a number of the build and release items. We are hoping to get to a set of basically 2 release channels, a stable and an edge. And then also establish some better cadence around releases themselves, because actually I think we're due for a release, not just because a couple of weeks have passed, but because we've landed some commits, some PRs that are important enough that they would require a new version number, a new release. So we'll postpone the discussion on Anton's question about always deploying SMI when you deploy Istio. We'll postpone that because Anton isn't here. So, okay. With that, let me switch back and say, Fonji, are you in a place where you might be able to speak for a moment? Oh, you can't do the intro today. No problem. Okay, I got it. Great. I also just want to say, Pavan, it's great to see you back on the call, man. It's good to have you.
Good to see you too.
Oh yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Let's get into the meat of it. So demos for today. Yeah. Let's. It's been a while since we've had a demo. So let me stop presenting and say, ask if either Girish, Nikhil, Anand, all of you I know have been working on an additional functionality in Meshery. So Girish, where are we going next with the demo? No, I don't think we can hear you. Say something again. Yep, you.
You're asking me?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, we're ready.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I had an interruption. Okay, you know what? Like, I'll give others the opportunity, and I'll probably present last. I think I anyways need a few minutes because I was finishing up something else. So I'm sorry. Yeah.
Cool. No problem. Well, hey, Nikhil, you're working on an interesting issue. I think one that actually I know Nuno has given really good user experience feedback on in the past. Nikhil, in case you're in a place where you might be able to show some of your work, now would be a good time.
Yeah, for sure. I've already almost completed. Just a bit is left. I'm sharing this.
And as you go to do that, Nikhil, if you would give people a little bit of context and an intro, a link to the issue that you're fixing, so that they have the right context.
Yeah, sure. I'm audible.
By the way, Nikhil did put the link into chat for the issue that he's addressing. So.
Just a bit of time because of the 3000 words keeps not compiling each page before it. It's not the one like nice actually for the configuration part it keeps compiling. It's great.
Yep, no problem. And so, actually, I'll just do Nikhil maybe a favor here, and I'll speak to the issue as people are looking it over. And that is to say
Actually, currently we have a label or kind of switch on the environment page where we can switch between in-cluster configuration and out-of-cluster configuration. So basically, the issue was to change it to two tabs, in which we can switch from one tab to another, where we can configure, where we can see what is the configuration currently in our page, and from that to where we can to out of cluster configuration. That is this one, where we can change the configuration of the Meshery page. That is, upload a Q file and show its configuration. Yes,
I can't help myself but explain it a little bit, and that's just because, guys, as most of you have deployed Meshery, most of you run Meshery locally, on Docker, probably on your laptop or something like that. And when you do it, I think most of you have probably experienced Meshery, the configuration of Meshery, by giving it your kube config, giving it your kube config file. And that's a very valid way of deploying Meshery. And that's the one that we present most prominently in the documentation. Having said that, there is another way of deploying Meshery, and that is to take and run Meshery as an application inside of your Kubernetes cluster. Some of you have probably done that to date, but probably most of you haven't. I'm just guessing. And the thing is Meshery needs to communicate with Kubernetes differently if Meshery is running outside the cluster versus inside the cluster. And Nikhil's work here is helping improve the user experience of those two deployment models. So Nikhil, back to you.
Yeah, basically, currently we have the page like this, where we have a label or the switch over here, which switches between the out of cluster and in cluster. Currently, I changed it to two tabs. You can switch it. Where this part, so the current configuration is that is the context name and the server name. And if we change the new file or add a new file, that is Q file, currently it is not complete. The submit button will not be there. It will automatically detect the Q configuration and update the configuration details over this site. So when we are done with the out of cluster part, then we can switch to the in cluster page and see what is the configuration. If in case we don't want to change anything, otherwise, if we want to change anything, then we can switch to the out of cluster deployment part and we can upload a new file to see the changes. Currently, the only change that is left, that whenever we don't need a submit button right now, so that whenever we upload a file, it automatically detects the cube file and the context name, and it will automatically refresh the page to show the context name and the server. Currently, we have this setup, which changes from in cluster to out of cluster. This has been changed to this page. It's almost 90% done. Just a submit button configuration is left. Yeah.
Nice. Who has questions for Nikhil? Who has comments on or questions about the behavior of what's happening there?
I do one, or I do have, but not really for that. It's more generic because I saw it popping out and maybe I missed something. What is for you in cluster and out of cluster deployment?
Totally. Thank you for that question, because I'm willing to bet you 11 out of 12 of you on the call have that same question, and shame on all of you for not having asked it. So so here's how I would describe it is the way that Meshery is presented to most, or the way that it's sort of written up when people say, I'd like to run Meshery, or rather they'd like to understand Meshery, is that we generally present them this architecture, and we try to say, hey, and I know this is kind of small, I think if I go full screen, you'll lose, but each of you have seen this before. This is just what we say is, all right, Meshery is a management plane. It is intended to help you run service meshes and interface with service meshes, a number of them. It is comprised of a set of containers. It's written in Go and uses React. And here's what that architecture looks like. It generates load, and it speaks to Kubernetes, and it speaks to meshes. It has adapters, one adapter per mesh. And so it has one container, and each adapter is deployed inside of a container. And Meshery, as a program, is deployed inside its own container. So there's Meshery plus one adapter for each type of mesh that you want to interface with. And we sort of say, when you're doing that, you can deploy that. It's a Docker Compose application. And when you look at the instructions to run it, it sort of assumes you're going to be running. Oh no. Hold on. Okay. It sort of assumes that you're going to be using Docker locally, and so if you're running Docker, then just run these commands and you can start Meshery. That said, in a smaller way, it says, or if you want to install Meshery on Kubernetes, you can do so by using manifest files and deploying Meshery on top of Kubernetes, or inside of Kubernetes. So the diagram here would be that this is Kubernetes over here. You're running a service mesh on top of Kubernetes. Instead of Meshery being outside of running in a different Docker environment over here, Meshery would be running adjacent to your service mesh. It would be running inside of Kubernetes. And I don't know that we're using the most easily comprehensible or comprehended terminology inside of the Meshery UI. We're saying that we're using the terms in cluster and out of cluster, and that assumes a lot, I think, that terminology, and it's confusing to me, honestly, and then that's what Nikhil is trying to help clarify. Right now, the version of Meshery that everyone has available to them, I think, has this type of an interface where you can flip the flag between I'm telling, configuring Meshery, saying, hey, I'm running it inside of a cluster, or no, I'm running it outside of a cluster. And if I'm running it outside of a cluster, I need to give you my kube config. Well, this isn't very good user experience. Nikhil's trying to improve upon that.
Okay, thank you very much. And okay, I kinda have then maybe an issue, not issue, but let's say why I didn't understand. But for me, it's like the path to reach to the in cluster. We are already running Meshery, so that was confusing for me. Like what you explained right now, for me, it makes totally sense, but it means that Meshery is already pre-installed in a Kubernetes cluster if we want to deploy it in Kubernetes, right? So when you launch the front page, you arrive and it says like, okay, do you want like out of or in? But this page for me, like as a user, right, is something that because I run Meshery already. I don't know if it makes sense. You know, like there's a
yeah, totally.
I don't know how to say, like misplaced or something like that, but it's like confusing to ask me after I'm running Meshery.
I know
what I want to do with that.
Yeah, totally. Yep. So
if it makes sense, I mean, then I understand that that's where we will install the connectors, right? So this in or out, that's the connect. It's for the connectors, not for Meshery itself.
So there's a it's funny. There are
maybe I'm missing all the point, but
no. Can everyone? You're not. No. Can everyone? Are people seeing issue number 236 right now?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. There's a couple of things. Right now, the user experience is not what it is intended to be in the future. So currently, when you go into Meshery, you go to the dashboard. The dashboard tells you about the status of Meshery itself and how it is configured. In the future, this status information should be moved over to the settings page to say, this is the status of your current configuration. That's not really what we're wanting to present on the dashboard. The dashboard will ultimately present the fact that you're connected to an Octarine instance and an Istio instance, and there's 5 services inside of Octarine and 2 inside of Istio, and it would tell you more about your applications, more about the health of your service meshes, not about the health of Meshery. So that's kind of one related point to what you're saying. The second point to what you're saying is part of the point of this PR, and this issue, and there's another issue, both of which are going to make this a much better experience. And so the net of it is that the goal here, and this will be accomplished very shortly, is that when you deploy Meshery inside of Kubernetes, Meshery is just going to know that, and you don't have to tell Meshery that. So that, yeah, as a user, you don't have to come over and in a confusing way, like, to tell Meshery something that it should already know. 2, when you deploy Meshery on your laptop, outside of Kubernetes, just in a simple Docker environment, most of the time, you probably got a local kube config. Meshery finds that and uses it. And that makes, I think, both of those motions, if you will, make it such that you as a user really shouldn't have to come over and answer these questions in the screen here. But if you do, if you want to use a different kube config file, or if you're deployed in cluster and for some reason Meshery didn't understand that correctly, or you're deployed in cluster and Meshery assumes that it should be using, that you want to interface with the default namespace or something like that, that you can still go to these screens and change part of where Meshery is pointed. Is that what you were getting to? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think you said a phrase here, and I think that's where we are not aligned. And I understand. For me, Docker desktop, because it contains today a Kubernetes anyway server with it. That's why I could like already publish Meshery to Kubernetes, even though I'm running on the laptop. So for me, I'm starting way before I reach this page, right? So for me, like it's like the out of cluster will always be the preferred solution, kind of, right? When we are running Docker for Docker desktop, because then we will pick up the kubeconfig file that points to the running Kubernetes, also on my laptop as a developer. But then if you are running a real cluster, a real Kubernetes cluster, maybe on Azure, AWS, whatever, on your on-premises, then you are pointing that this out of cluster is when we are started Meshery through Docker desktop, let's say, but then you are pointing out to your Kubernetes cluster. So you are making like the separation between Docker itself and the Kubernetes, where I, as a user, what I was seeing was that my Docker desktop is my Kubernetes also. You understand?
Yeah.
See, so that's why when I reached the Meshery page, because it was deployed, this in cluster, I was really not understanding what it was, because it was not suggesting me to actually upload the file. Right?
Right. Yep. Yes. Yes.
Again, really from a point of view of pure user.
Oh yeah.
So it was just funny, because for me it was like in cluster, and I was like, what? Meshery now has his own I don't know, K3s cluster embedded, and so that's why I can like do in cluster things, and actually that's not the case. So okay, thank you very much. Separation done in my brain at least.
Is anyone, and I'll put this out for everyone, is this is confusing as shit to me. This is why I was asking for it to be changed. And I don't know that the terminology that we're even moving to, which is terminology like this, out of cluster, in cluster, that still is confusing. I think this is a point in time iteration of an experience that needs to continue to be enhanced. It may need to be enhanced with visuals, because the world in which we live in is very flexible. I mean, we collectively in the cloud native ecosystem live in is very flexible, and you can do all kinds of strange things. If people have, soak this in. When Nikhil's changes land, it would be great if all of you guys could reflect on that experience. I doubt that this is the terminology that would continue to live as is. So, awesome. Okay, that was. Thank you, Nikhil. Any other feedback for Nikhil? If not, Garish, you're back.
Can you guys see my screen? And I hope you guys can hear me.
Yes.
Sorry, I've been having some. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I've been like, my headset has been like, it's I think my computer's Bluetooth. It just keeps interrupting sometimes. Anyways, so one of the things we've been working on is so there are two issues. Like, one is, if you guys know, we have this capability to actually ping an adapter. So right now, like, in my environment, I have no adapters connected. That's intentional. It's my development environment, so I'm not intending to run like adapters when I'm not using them. So people knew about this earlier, but then we didn't have this capability for Kubernetes. Like, when you hover over that, it'll actually show you the server. But beyond that, we did not have much. So one of the things I'm working on is actually to bring in the capability to ping a Kubernetes adapter. So now that ping Kubernetes, sorry, not an adapter. So earlier the way it was Meshery was kind of a very thin layer when it was communicating with Kubernetes, because it was always relying on the adapter for communicating with Kubernetes. Now, in order to go one step further, what we are working on now is to make Meshery talk to Kubernetes, so we can actually get some metadata. Now, this has two advantages, which I'll be touching on today. So the first thing is actually the capability to ping and ensure that, indeed, you're able to talk to Kubernetes. Now, what it returns is actually right now, what I'm doing is I'm just talking to Kubernetes to actually get the list of nodes and to understand the underlying infrastructure. Now, that's a common function I've written, and I'm going to be using it in two places. So this is one. Eventually, what I can probably do is that, when people hover over it, we can actually show some more information about the Kubernetes cluster, which I'm still working on, unfortunately. So hopefully, next week, this feature will be in a better state and it will be landed. Right now, it's just on my local. I'm working on it. So this is the first part, which essentially talks to Kubernetes, ensures that the connectivity is fine, and we are all good. So that's the first part. Now the second part is that I hope people on this call know about the service mesh spec, or the let me just try to bring it up here. I forgot the right name. It's called the GitHub layer. It's the Istio benchmark spec. Yes, sorry. Yes, the service mesh benchmark spec. I'm not sure if everybody on this call know about this. So to give you a highlight, so here's a spec. You can find this under Layer 5 IO service mesh benchmark spec. It is open to everybody in the sense, we would be very happy to collaborate with all the people who are interested. One of the things we are working on is now Meshery is conducting load tests on your behalf on applications, but at the moment it is only recording client-side metrics, and if you have connected Meshery to a Prometheus instance, it will also collect some server-side metrics, which is more at a high level cluster-wide metrics. Beyond that, we are not doing much because all those metrics, for the duration of the test, is quite some payload by itself. Now, apart from that, one of the other interesting things is the capability to record environment on which the test is being. So up until now, you, for example, when you run a test now, versus when you run another test sometime in future or maybe sometime in past, you can only compare the results and see how the two applications or how the two versions of the applications performed by looking at their client-side metrics, which is the latency and throughput. We are still working on comparison of the server-side metrics. But then the other thing that's missing is information about the metadata about the node. So here is an example of something every time a test was run, we are recording the results. We also want to know the version of Kubernetes on which the test was run, and some node information. For example, here is an example. It would say there are totally 5 nodes. And each node is of type an N32, and it has 32 cores, and it has not this much memory. So this kind of information is definitely good because when you're comparing multiple test results, it also gives some more visibility into the test as to what kind of an environment was this run, because it might not be an apples to apples comparison. If you compare two test results when one is run on a production quality cluster while the other one is on somebody's laptop. So in order to make, in order to bring clarity in that area, we are now venturing into the area where we are trying to collect more metadata from the node. So one of the things, we did as part of this week's development is actually to collect the node metrics. So here's an example of a test which I ran. Please ignore what it's really doing, but then the crux of it is this is the part which essentially is the client-side metric, which shows how many connections they use for the test, how long the test went, were there errors, the min duration, average duration, P50, 75, 99, and so on, all the percentile values. Now here, this is probably not the final. What I was trying to do was so after the test was run, I was also trying to get the node information and print it here. So now one thing, there are two sides to it. Like, one, the node information is going to be persisted along with the test results. Now, whether to show it here or not, I'm still debating it. Like, after I finalize, I'll definitely open it up for discussion for sure. But here, this is just a place for me. I'm testing it, so I thought it's a good place for me to just see it, before I can conclude on anything. So I'm just displaying it here for now. So you can see, so the node, I'm using for testing here is actually, the Kubernetes I'm using for testing here is a single node Kubernetes. It just has one node, and here's the host name. Here are the number of CPUs, here's the memory, the architecture, the operating system, the Kubernetes version, the container runtime use. So this is kind of like our first step, where we are trying to, kind of record some information about some node metrics, so that we can eventually kind of, populate it and get it to a format, which is kind of standard. And this is the other, the format, we as part of Layer 5 are actually working towards. Of course, this is not yet finalized. It's open for contributions from everybody. So please feel free to comment, on whatever you feel like, and please suggest, changes to this spec. So eventually, the way it'll be is that Meshery, when it's recording the results, it will actually be able to, present the results in this format, so people can actually even download them and use it for their offline comparison, if that would help. And again, I think Lee has already been talking about the use of Meshery, as a tool in several places. So in those places, when people are running tests, such a common format would actually be enforcing. So we are kind of marching towards that. So that's the two parts. I wanted to present. One is collecting the node metrics and pretty much using that to ping Kubernetes, to ensure that connectivity from Meshery to Kubernetes is indeed functional. That's pretty much what I had to show to you guys today.
Hey, this is Ramesh here.
Hey.
Hey, sorry, I was somehow shouting on the video, but I could not get a response because it was mute, I guess, whatever it is. Yeah, so two questions. One was from the previous conversation when Lee was explaining about in cluster and out of cluster thing. When we are running on a Docker and we deploy the Kubernetes, so Meshery will not be on a management plane for the outer Kubernetes, right?
And Girish, go ahead. Ramesh, great question. I'm going to let
sorry, yes, Meshery is. Yeah, sorry. So I'm just going to put my answer there. So Meshery is not going to be managing Kubernetes, so eventually the plan is that, even now, you can actually manage work with your service mesh, like Istio or Linkerd, from Meshery. So it is going to be the management plane for the mesh. Should it sit on Kubernetes or not is actually, kind of, I think it's more of a convenience. We support both. So yeah, so I'm not sure if that completely answers your question, Ramesh, but yeah, so it doesn't matter where it sits. You can put it on the cloud and maybe make it talk to your cluster, which is in VPN. I'm not going to go into the networking specification there, but then, or network parts there, but then the point I'm trying to make is that, Meshery can sit anywhere, as long as it can talk to the Kubernetes API server. I think, it can do whatever it needs to do, with respect to managing. So Meshery is working with them, talking to Kubernetes, getting the node information. All the things we're doing now, should be possible. Whether you run it on Docker outside of Kubernetes or even on Kubernetes. We also have the deployment YAML for deploying Meshery on Kubernetes. It can still talk to the Kubernetes API server from inside the cluster and do the same kind of changes it's doing when it's outside the cluster.
Okay, one more question. Since this is a management plane, can we ask Meshery to inject an application, a microservice, to a specific pod, or instruct Kubernetes to inject a specific microservice onto a new pod or something?
So It fundamentally, so this question is not actually, I would say it's not specifically a Meshery question. It's specifically a Kubernetes question. So I mean, I'll just talk about Meshery's capability in the sense that if Kubernetes can do it, you can do it with Meshery. I think that probably would answer your question. I know it's not the complete answer. You know, injecting stuff into a running container, I'm not sure if people do that. The way, for example, Istio does it is like, you know, it'll inject. I mean, the sidecar injector will actually, you know, spin up another container in the same pod when it's bringing it up, like, you know, and it has its way of doing it, like, you know, with a lot of things. I mean, like, I'm just talking about like the end results, like, you know, I mean, the progress to get that running is still, like, you know, there's quite a bit, like, and Istio does all that. So yes, now that Istio is again running, I mean, at least today, like, you know, Istio runs well on Kubernetes. So yeah, so fundamentally, if your Kubernetes can support it, like, you know, Istio leverages that capability with a lot of things like, you know, the admission controller and things. So can Meshery do it? Yeah. So if Kubernetes supports it, and if, for example, Istio can do it, you know, you probably should be able to do it with Meshery.
Okay. So because I got this question because we always extract telemetry from sidecars of each of the pods. But then I was thinking, how if we are able to, you know, instead of creating a Docker, putting on Kubernetes, blah, 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 we can just say, hey, this is my jar file or some, you know, war file, whatever it is, put it into a new pod and let me know the details. So instead of extracting telemetry, we are injecting some microservice, not just the data of the whole application and specifications through a config file or something, or through some YAML file or something. So.
Nice. And actually, guys, I'm going to interrupt for just a minute just to say that Gunjan had an item to show that was on the agenda, and so we just need to let him interject if we can. Gunjan, do you want to go ahead and?
Hello, sir.
Yep.
Sir, may I show my screen?
Please.
So I have this issue. It was total performance test.
You know,
Meshery page. The issue number is 164. So I have to make this card view, and I have to mention value here. It is 513. So I'm not getting where I can this value. So how to get this value?
Yeah, good question. So to just give context, the issue that Gunjan is working on is, I think, is a really neat issue, and it is the notion that each time that someone runs a performance test, Garish was talking about the notion that there's just the anonymous statistics that are collected about the performance tests. And part of the hopefully public service that Meshery will perform is to, over time, analyze those performance test results and begin to inform the world or inform those interested in service meshes about service mesh performance. And today, there's been a little over 500 performance tests that have been run. And there's a public-facing endpoint that will give you the number of tests that have been run. That public-facing endpoint is documented in this issue that's being shared on this screen. Actually, I'm sorry. I gave the wrong URL, I think, in the wrong issue. In the chat, it's let me give you guys the right link. So sorry, wrong link. The second link in the chat is to the issue that Gunjan is going over. So there's a public-facing endpoint. It's very simple in nature. It's this URL here. If we were to go to that URL, all that is returned is a very simple JSON key value pair. and the key is called total runs. I guess I lied. It's not 500. It's 455 total performance tests that people have run. And what we'd like to do is let people know how many hamburgers we've sold. You know, kind of like the McDonald's sign, if you guys are familiar with it. McDonald's says, you know, billions and billions of hamburgers sold. And we'd like to let people know how many performance tests Meshery has run. And so the mock-up was to just expose that number somewhere on the page. And so Gungeon, and so most of you know that the Layer 5 IO and the Meshery page just runs off of Jekyll running on GitHub pages, which means it's a static site. And so in order to do retrieval of a public-facing endpoint, we need to use some JavaScript, Gungeon. I think this is your question, is I think the jQuery,
Yes, sir.
jQuery as a library, I think is already leveraged in a place or two in the Layer 5 site. That might be the library that you would want to use to make an AJAX call, an asynchronous JavaScript call, to retrieve the current endpoint number, and then just mark that up with some CSS and display it on the page. So I can give a quick example, maybe just after the call, on you know, a set of jQuery or something that you might want to use to grab that.
Okay, sir.
If that helps, yeah, that's okay. All right, just a couple minutes left. Anybody have anything urgent? Any call-outs they want to make? Before everyone goes off and has a wonderful Friday. A wonderfully caffeinated Friday. Yeah, nice. Okay. Oh, good. Okay. I was excited. Nuno was on the call earlier. And Haim, were you going to say something or?
Excuse me?
Oh, I thought I thought you were going to say something, and so I.
Sure. No, just.
No. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Happy weekend.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks, all. Very good to see you guys. See you next week.
Bye.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Bye, sir.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
See you,
sir.
sir.